another theme episode of Musical Epics with Shari. It's been a minute, and I am so happy to be back recording for you guys. This is your host, Sharon Bodua Bodu. Call me Shari if you love what I do. To all new and returning listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys. This podcast would be meaningless without you. So thank you very much for supporting this little dream in my heart. If I sound like I just woke up, that's because I actually just woke up and it's around 2 a.m. So please forgive me. But as we usually do on this podcast, we have a theme for every month which forms the center of our discussions and lays the foundation for the discussion for the rest of the month. So for this month, I present to you our theme. Drum rolls, please. Guilty as charged. Before I explain the theme and set the ground for our discussion in a later episode, I just want to say I have an amazing announcement at the end of this episode, so kindly stick and stay till the end of the episode so you can hear them for yourself. As I stated earlier, the theme for this month is guilty as charged, and I know it sounds a bit vague right now, but you're going to get it soon. Just stay with me. Lately, I've been thinking about the life journey of a Christian and how this journey is portrayed to the outside world as a way to reel people in and get them to have a relationship with God. We see people around us who are Christians and we admire them. We admire some, and for some, their journey looks a bit questionable, but at least to us. We all have celebrities, pastors, men and women of God that we admire because of how beautiful their relationship with God is. Although we do not get to see the entire journey except what they allow us to see on Instagram, we can still admire them from afar with the little exposure that we have. Some of us admire the Christian journeys of people a little bit closer to us, our parents, our grandparents, our local church pastors, our youth pastors, our siblings, friends, you name them. No matter who we are or how close we are to God or how beautiful our relationship is with Him, people are always watching us. And those people are either getting inspired or otherwise, depending on what we do with our journey. And this is not just for Christians. This is just basic life principle. As representatives of God here on this earth, how we present our life journey with God has an impact on whether someone decides to give it a try or not. The first impression that someone gets when it comes to being a Christian sets the tone for the rest of the person's journey. It's like going into any relationship with anyone. If your first impression of the person is kindness and thoughtfulness, that sets your expectations for the relationship, and anything opposite to that usually comes as a surprise. This is why it's very important that we do not set the wrong expectations or paint half pictures to people about what it means to be a Christian through the way we speak or live or interact with each other. Now, this principle can be talked about in different ways to communicate different ideas, but I want to talk to you about how I've been thinking about this and how I've been approaching this principle lately. There is a way that we look and talk about the salvation process, especially what it means to be forgiven by God and the life afterwards. We as Christians have the basics covered, and there is a little aspect that I usually do not hear people talk about for whatever reason, and I would like to open up a conversation about it. Ever since I decided to take my Christian life seriously and actually put in the work, I've been on learning and rethinking some things, and one of the main things have been the concept of sin guilt. Every single believer and maybe an unbeliever can agree with me that we are all inherently bad people and there is no form of goodness within us. Even the good that we sometimes want to portray is a bit tainted, especially if it's not founded in God. So whether you were a long-time Christian or you just decided to build a relationship with God, there's something inherently bad in you that makes you want to seek out a higher authority that can fix it. Most theologians refer to this as our human nature or our sin nature. This sin nature leads us to do so many things that are considered bad or wrong in the light of the right standards presented to us by God. I'm starting to sound a bit churchy, but I'm trying to say that we all have done or are doing something that goes against the standard that we are supposed to live up to, not just because we wanted to do it, but mostly because of the kind of nature we got when sin entered into the picture. Now, as Christians, we believe that Jesus Christ came to die and pay for the price that we were supposed to pay for. So basically, he took our place. There has been so many analogies that has been espoused to make this concept a little bit relatable and understandable for us, because let's face it, when it happened, you and I were not there. So it's only fair that we get something in our present world to help us understand. Lately, I've been thinking about one of the said analogies, and I keep wondering if it really paints the full picture of salvation. And then in extension, if we as Christians portray the full picture of what it means to be a Christian, not just the amazing part at the beginning, but the entire journey, the beginning, the middle, and the end. I want to take some time and tell you about one of the analogy of salvation that I've been thinking about and show you what I mean by us telling the full picture or painting the full picture. Now, before I get into the analogy, let me issue a disclaimer that this analogy is mostly told in churches, and this is the version that I heard and grew up believing. There could be so many different versions out there, but this is the one that I heard and believe. You know what? I want you all to do me a favor. After hearing my version, kindly let me know if you heard this analogy or not, and whether your version is the same as mine. You can do that through my socials, which will be in the description box of this episode. So now, here is the analogy. The analogy is told in the form of a story, so I'll tell it in first person because that's just much easier. So in the story, I am a sinner who has been brought to court to be tried for all my sins and all my shortfalls. So I'm the accused, God is the judge, and the devil is the prosecutor. I am standing in one of those boxes in court, and the devil is just out here reading all the sins that I've committed in my life and trying to convince the judge and everybody around that I am guilty of these sins, and I literally have no one to defend me. And make no mistake, everything that the devil is saying is actually true, and I did do all of those things. So once the devil finishes and all hope is lost because I did do all of those things and the penalty for my sins is unbearable pain and death, Jesus comes in as my defendant and hands the judge an envelope. The judge opens up the envelope and it's written on it that all my sins have been paid for and I am forgiven, so I was set free. Now that is an incredible story, which when turned into a movie could be Oscar worthy. It could win an Oscar. I'm just saying. It's a great story and an amazing depiction of what Jesus did for us at Calvary. However, for some reason, as I got older, I can't help but admit that this story, like any other way that the gospel and the salvation is presented, does not really paint the full picture of salvation, especially for a new believer. Now, do not get me wrong. I do not have a problem with the story. Of course, the entire salvation story cannot be fitted into a single story. My issue is that in real life, somehow, the journey ends once we have been saved, just like in the story. I feel like there is not enough conversation about what to do with the sin that we have committed before we were saved. What do I do with all the things that I did before that I now know are wrong? Because mind you, like I said earlier, all the charges that the devil is leveling against me in court are all true. I mean, I did do all of those things. And you know the worst part? The worst part is for someone like me. Those of us who knew better but did not do better. Some of the charges that were on the devil's list were committed in full knowledge of how bad or wrong those things are. Before I decided to take my Christian life seriously, I was not oblivious of the right things to do. I grew up in a Christian home, so I knew all the things that were out of bounds for me, but I did do them anyway. I knew better, but I didn't do better. Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts calls it the Eve behavior. So although it's amazing that Jesus has forgiven me of all those charges, there is still the awareness in my head and in my heart that I did do all of those things. Sometimes even the consequences of those things are a bitter reminder that they actually did happen. Typical example, someone giving birth at a young age and later becoming a Christian. Although God has forgiven the person, the consequences of that sin in the form of maybe the child that was born or the struggle that the mother has to go through to raise the child would be a constant reminder that the mark was missed and something wrong has happened. And no matter how much we try to see the positive side of the sins, there would always be moments in our life where we'll feel guilty and sometimes shame for what we did that we knew we shouldn't have done. So in moments where we feel guilty as charged, what do we do? What do we do with the thoughts and the feelings of our Eve behavior? Yes, I know and I believe God has forgiven us and washed us and made us clean and all of those amazing things. But unfortunately, that does not take away the memories of all the bad things we engaged in, the guilt that lingers after doing something that we shouldn't have done, and the shame that comes from the knowledge that there was a time in our lives where we were living below the standard. Sin guilt and sin shame. What do we do when we know deep down that we are guilty as charged? How do we move forward with the forgiveness that we know we do not deserve? This is the conversation I want to open up this month. Like always, this is something that I'm currently struggling with. It's very difficult to move forward with the weight of guilt and shame. And although I do not claim to have all the answers, I do want to open up a conversation for myself and for someone else who is struggling with this. This is the foundation of the discussion, so you would want to come back here for the actual discussion itself, because I promise you we will talk about all of it, and at the end of the day we will know how to work through sin guilt so it doesn't have to hold us back anymore. Thank you so much for listening up to this point. Now on to the announcement. I am very, very pleased to let you all know that I am adding 2 new segments to Musical Epics with Shari podcast. The first segment is the Epic News, and here I will be sharing with you all the news making rounds in the gospel music industry and the Christian circles. I am very excited to do this because I think Christians do really amazing things, and this is my chance to let all of that be known. Here is how you can help me bring this segment to life. Anytime you see a Christian out there doing the Lord's work, just let me know and we will give them a shout out. If it's on social media, especially Instagram, you can just tag me and I'll get it, or just send me a DM or an email of news making rounds. All the info would be in the description box of this episode and any other episode, so you can reach me through that. The next new segment that I'm adding to the podcast is Epic Lyric. So this is where I share with you, just for a few seconds, my favorite part of the song and the discussion. I have finally gathered the courage to try and add snippets of songs into the episode, and I hope this makes the podcast more fun to listen to. I am super excited about these new additions. Musical Epics with Shari is evolving, and we will keep evolving and keep trying new things. I really do hope that everything that happens here and everything that we talk about here gives you permission and courage to live your best life. Thank you so much for listening to this theme episode. The main episode will be released soon, so as you wait, I will want you to think about the areas in your life where you feel guilt or shame, or even used to feel guilt and shame, and how you've been or you are dealing with those feelings. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Also, be sure to leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, because it really pushes the podcast for other people to find, and it means the world to me if you would leave me a review there. I hope to come your way very, very soon. Until then, be safe, be happy, be you. Bye.